The 2024-25 Premier League season was one of the most competitive and entertaining ones we've ever witnessed. Liverpool's dominance, Southampton's misery, 9 teams getting European football. The thing that really stood out was the general skill level. The mid-table teams were as competitive as they've ever been. Palace won the FA Cup, Forest were Champions League contenders, and teams like Brentford, Bournemouth and Brighton tested the top teams all season long. We've never seen this much parity. But even so, there was plenty of room for improvement. This graph shows last season broken down by game week, with how many points each team picked up per match. It's basically a live table. And as exciting as the campaign was, it does highlight areas which could improve. The first 9 game weeks were obviously congested, but by game week 10, the cracks started to show. Liverpool started to run away with the league, and on the opposite end of the table, Southampton started to become nailed on for relegation. The battle for Europe stayed alive until the final day, but even in the run-in, Forest's fairy tale came to an end, and Wolves regained some form and the relegation fight was decided with 8 weeks to go. But over the summer, the Premier League's gotten even stronger. Every title contender has improved. The relegation battle could go down to the wire, and the rivalries are as prevalent as ever. But all this is not even the main reason we're about to witness one of the best Premier League seasons of all time. But before going into detail on why this season might be so good, we need to define what actually makes a season of football good. For us, competitiveness comes to mind as the most important factor, so we decided to see how competitive the last 5 Premier League seasons actually were. At either end of the box plots are the first and last place teams during that season. The next lines inside of that are second place, which shows how competitive the title race was, and 17th and 18th, which shows you how many points you needed to survive and how close the relegation battle was. We've also labelled 4th for Champions League qualification, 6th or 7th for European football, and the median, which shows the midpoint of the table, basically the amount of points in between 10th and 11th. And looking at these really shows what seasons were actually competitive in all areas of the league. The 3 middle seasons had the closest title races, with 2 of them coming down to the last day of the season. But those seasons also had the biggest gap between the top 2 and the next best teams, with Man City and Liverpool or Arsenal running away from the crowd. The season that just passed actually had the most congestion in the top half of the table. Every team was in contention for the next best finish. It was also the joint highest points to stay up, and the second highest median, showing real parity and a well-rounded level of competition. The only real areas of disparity were at either end of the table. This season had by far the biggest gap between 17th and 18th in the last 5 years. But the most competitive season since the one we just had was undoubtedly the one that finished in 2021, when Manchester City ran away with the league in lockdown. And this does seem to highlight a bit of a pattern. Either the title race and relegation battles are close, and the rest of the league isn't, or the general quality level is high, but one team runs away with the league, and 3 teams quickly fall to the bottom. But if we look at the trends over a slightly longer time frame, it tells a really interesting story. The Big Six is a term that's emerged in the modern Premier League to describe Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal and Spurs. 6 teams which have dominated the league in recent times. But a lot of fans don't like this term, and the idea in general, and honestly I can't really blame them. It feels monopolistic, and doesn't give chances to smaller teams to succeed. But luckily, the league has never been further from a top 6 since the Big Six were labelled. If we look at how many points the Big Six obtained in the last 9 seasons, we can clearly see a downwards trend. Back in 2017, those 6 teams dominated with 477 combined points, which is 42% of the points available across a whole Premier League season, won by just 30% of teams involved. But this total has been slowly dropping, and the season that just finished saw the lowest tally of Big Six points since Leicester won the league in 2016. They only accumulated 33% of points this year, which is a massive drop-off and highlights how competitive the general level of the league is becoming. If that's not persuasive enough, we can look at the average league position in the same time frame. If the 6 so-called giants finish 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, in any order, they average a league position of 3.5, and this has actually happened 4 times in the last 9 years. But in the 2022-23 season, this was massively disrupted, and the last season was by far the highest average position the Big Six have ever finished as a unit, all the way down at 7th. And this highlights the emergence of new teams that are really challenging the traditional order of the league. Spurs versus Newcastle, or Man United versus Villa, used to be a walkover, but these days you have to favour the latter teams to at least put up a fight. And this parity is brilliant for the league, which actually leads on to the next reason why this season has a potential to be an all-timer. and that is the transfer window. This summer has been unlike any other. The prestige of playing in the Premier League seems to be higher than ever. We've seen Liverpool bolster their team as well as renewing Salah and Van Dijk's contracts. Arsenal have signed Gyökeres to finally get their much needed striker, and City have Rodri coming back from injury, along with appointing Cherki, Ait-Nouri and Reinders. But even newly promoted teams like Sunderland have had strong windows. There's nothing to suggest they can't survive a tough few seasons, then build themselves up to start challenging for Europe, as Newcastle, Villa and others have all done in the last 10 years. I think a lot of clubs outside the Big Six realised that a competitive high-level league actually translates to the best opportunities for success, especially because there's an increasing amount of ways to have a good season in the modern Premier League. Clubs like Villa and Forest didn't win any silverware last season, but they had great campaigns and qualified for Europe. Chelsea and Newcastle were the same, but both picked up a trophy. Spurs and United struggled massively in the league, but they still managed to make it to a European final. Even teams like Brentford and Brighton, who seem to scout the most insane talent and then get cleaned out by the bigger teams, still managed to challenge for Europe, and in the process are building incredibly stable foundations and doing it with financial sustainability. Liverpool winning the league has made City look mortal again, and English football is so good right now, we're likely going to be competing for 8 European spots. You don't have teams just standing by and being content with survival anymore. Every position is up for grabs. Every team having something to play for makes every game week mean so much more. And I think Premier League clubs are finally realising how valuable it is to be competitive in such a popular league with so many opportunities. But as highly as we hold competitiveness in our argument, it's not everything. Entertainment is more than important, and seasons are remembered for insane moments and unforgettable games. While completely subjective, we've created a ranking system to rank rivalries and head-to-heads based off the history between the two clubs and how mouth-watering the fixture is, in terms of the clubs and their fans rather than just the skill level or quality of the teams. Timeless battles like Sunderland versus Newcastle are stonewall 5-star matchups, while not direct derbies, games like Liverpool versus Spurs with their recent history are easily worthy of 4 stars. And games like Villa versus Forest, with their close geography and club stature, are easily enough to get 3. We haven't ranked anything below that, but with our own, and I repeat, subjective ranking, this season is going to deliver 70 games ranked 3-star and above. This involves 22 4-star games and a whopping 14 5-star games, which means you're watching countless classics every month. But even if you don't agree with our ranking system, you can't deny that every game week does enough box office games from top to bottom. These matchups aren't just interesting for the fans of the clubs playing, everyone wants to tune in to watch them. Even if these games meant nothing for the table, they'd still be top level entertainment. But with how competitive the league's becoming, the vast majority of these fixtures will have everything to play for on top of the bragging rights. And I think you're going to be able to tell just watching the players from game week 1. Just looking at the fixture list makes me feel like we're being spoilt this season. I've been watching the Premier League my whole life, and I've never been so excited for a campaign. There are many reasons why people love the Premier League, and most of them are subjective. It doesn't really matter what you enjoy, as long as you enjoy it. But one thing is for sure, and that's the direction that the Premier League's going in. The days of City's reign and Big Six domination are quickly coming to an end. Every position in the league is to play for. It's going to be pretty hard to get a table prediction right, but we're going to give it a go anyway. Just please don't hold us accountable if it's in awful shape by Christmas. We just want to see a great season of football at the end of the day, and luckily, I think we might be about to.